Welcome back to the self-soothing series. Today I want to talk to you about breathing. Of course, we all know how to breathe. We wouldn't be alive if we weren't breathing. But it is the quality of the breath that we can improve in order to deal with difficult emotions in challenging times. If you remember back to the self-soothing tip on letting it out, you'll remember that anger was one of the emotions that really didn't work to be let out. In fact, letting out our anger increased the state anger that we were experiencing. Instead, psychologists recommended that we talk it out. But in order to get to the point where we can talk it out, we first need to decrease that state of anger. And one of the main things that psychologists recommend is to use the breath. When I think of breath control, I think of it as pranayama, which means controlling the life force, the prana that is within us, through controlling the breath. I think of it this way because I studied yoga with Swami Satchidananda in Virginia, New York, and India. And so I studied under his system of integral yoga. But every yoga school has a different approach to pranayama, or the control of breath. And I'll leave a link to an article in the description box that goes through the different approaches. Before you begin any system of pranayama or controlling the breath, it's important to see your doctor and to make sure that this is right for you. Because some of these breathing techniques could increase blood pressure, or they could be contraindicated if you're pregnant. There are many reasons to talk to your doctor before you begin. Secondly, while we're going to talk about different types of breathing techniques, those that are calming, those that are stimulating, and those that are cooling, I'm not really going to talk you through how to do them. I'm just going to briefly demonstrate. And what I recommend is that once you've talked to your doctor, you find yourself a certified yoga instructor in your area that can teach you these techniques and observe you and make sure that you're doing them properly. Some of these techniques, if you're not doing them properly, can lead to hyperventilation or other problems. So I really strongly urge you to make sure that you learn from a certified yoga instructor. Again, there are other breath control methods that you may want to look into, like the Wim Hof method. But I'm just talking through the yogic breathing because it's the system that I learned when I studied yoga. Now, after all of that preamble, I can understand if you're a little bit concerned about trying to control your breath. But there have been many studies that show that there are physiological as well as really great psychological benefits to breath control. In 2012, there was a study that indicated that the use of pranayama decreased smoking cravings in those who were trying to quit smoking. In 2013, there was another study that suggested that pranayama increased our cognitive functions, particularly our executive functions like memory and decision making. How it works is that when we increase our deep breathing, we bring oxygen into our lower lobes of our lungs. And there are receptors for the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. It calms the mind, it lowers our blood pressure, and it reduces the amount of stress hormones that are produced by the adrenal gland. In fact, as early as 2013, studies showed that deep breathing reduced our stress response and therefore lowered our anxiety and our depression by bringing increased levels of oxygen into the body. And there was a study in 2014 that backs up what I said about decreasing the blood pressure through the use of pranayama. We've talked about mindfulness on this channel before, and a study in 2017 actually found that breath control contributed to mindfulness because of the singular focus on the breath. And if you think all of that's just a little bit woo-woo, I can assure you that last year in 2019, there was a study that showed that using the three-part breath and pranayama breath control actually helped those with pneumonia to recover their lung function. And I'll tell you that when I was in hospital last year, one of the things that the doctors made me do was breath work in order to make sure that while I was in bed for a month, I didn't develop pneumonia. So today we're going to talk about 3 types of breath. We're going to talk about a calming type of breath, we're going to talk about stimulating breath, and we're going to talk about cooling breath. And so in order to bring more oxygen into the body, to improve our mind function, and to help us control anxiety, depression, and anger, we can use Dirga Swasam, the 3-part breath. Now, if we are only breathing into this part of our body, it may be difficult to actually change the way we breathe. And so I would offer you a couple of techniques to start to observe this breath. And the first technique is to imagine that our breath goes into our body, and our body is like a cup, an empty vessel. And we want to see our body fill up from the bottom to the top. So place your hand on your belly, just above your navel. And as you inhale, try to push out your hand so that you're actually filling your belly like a balloon. And as you exhale, let the belly drop back towards the spine. This is the bottom of your cup. So inhale and push out that belly, and exhale and let the belly drop back to the spine. Now the second part of the breath is into the rib cage. That's the second part of your cup. So if you place your hands on the side of your rib cage, you can imagine that your rib cage is kind of like a bellows, and that you want to push out against your hands as you're breathing. So let's do the 2 parts of this breath. We'll start with the belly, pushing it out as we inhale, and then try to see if you can push out against your hands on the side of your rib cage like a bellows as you inhale. Then as you exhale, let the bellows drop, and then the belly. I know the rib cage is going to be a little bit hard for a little while, but keep practicing and you'll get it. The third part of our breath is into the upper chest, where normally we're doing most of our breathing. So this is the top of the cup. And as we do the breathing, we want to fill from the belly, then the rib cage, then the upper chest. And we want to exhale from the upper chest, then the rib cage, and then the belly. So let's try that together. Inhale, push out the belly, push out the rib cage. See if you can move those hands if you put them on the side, and then place your hand on the chest and see if you can let it rise. And exhale, let the chest drop, then the rib cage, and then the belly goes back in towards the spine. Now that we've understood that our breathing should be like filling a cup from the bottom to the top, using our belly, rib cage, and upper chest, and then letting it out like we're pouring it out from the top to the rib cage to the belly, we can begin to count our breath. And you want to make sure that your exhalation is at least as long as your inhalation. You might want to start with a count of 4. When you find yourself a certified yoga instructor, they'll show you how to increase the count and maybe even make the exhalation longer. In time, when you've reached an advanced level with this breathing technique, you might want to ask them about breath retention. The reason that yogis use breath retention is that apparently it supercharges the body with prana, or life force. Now, what might not be obvious because I was talking through it is that the deep 3-part breath, or Dirga Swasam, is always performed by breathing through the nose only. You can practice Dirga Swasam, that 3-part breath, whenever you feel the need to be a little more calm. Ideally, eventually, you'll be breathing that deep 3-part breath the entire day. But when you're beginning, it might be useful to focus on doing that breath for at least 5 minutes each day. The second of our soothing breaths is called Brahmari, or the humming breath, and it is particularly good for helping people to sleep. Now, it uses the Dirga Swasam 3-part breath as its base, but it adds a little hum on the exhale. So it looks a little bit like this. If you've ever been in a yoga circle where there has been an om, a continuous om going around the room, you'll have that same sort of lovely feeling of vibration. The final soothing breath that we're going to talk through is one from integral yoga that precedes meditation. And the integral yoga practice of Swami Satchidananda is outlined in a certain way so that the asanas calm the body, and then the pranayama calms the breath. And through the use of breath and a focus on the breath inward and outward, we can calm the mind, and through that focus, move into meditation. So the breath is called nadi suddhi, or alternate nostril breathing. And it always begins with an inhalation through the left nostril and ends with an exhalation through the left nostril. Nadi suddhi is so called because in the yogic system, the yogic map of the body, there are 3 nadis, and they are kind of energy highways. There's the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. The Sushumna goes straight through the center of the body, where the Ida and the Pingala just cross over one another at those energy centers that you might have heard of called chakras. So Nadi Suddhi helps to balance the energy flow through the Ida and the Pingala so that eventually your energy can flow right through the center of your being. By using Nadi Suddhi and balancing the Ida and the Pingala, we are working on both the masculine and the feminine aspects of our being, the solar and the lunar aspects of our being. And we are stimulating the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So, in integral yoga, we use our fingers to block off the nostrils. We begin just cleaning out the lungs with an inhalation, and we're using the deep 3-part breath, always through the nose, and an exhalation. Again, the deep 3-part breath through the nose. Then we block off the right nostril using our thumb, and we inhale through the left nostril. And then we block off the left nostril, releasing the right nostril, and we exhale through the right nostril. We inhale through the right nostril, and then we block it off using our thumb, and we exhale through the left nostril, having released. Inhale through the left nostril, block it off, exhale through the right, inhale through the right, release the left, block off the right, and exhale through the left. And if we wanted to stop there, we would stop with the exhalation on the left nostril. We want to build up our practice to at least 15 repetitions of this. Some schools will even place fingers here on the forehead to stimulate that particular chakra, but it will all depend on where you're studying. It's a useful breath to learn if you want to meditate. All of the soothing breaths are obviously helpful if you're feeling anxiety or if you're angry. But what isn't so obvious is that they also help with depression. There is another breath that we're going to talk about today that's stimulating. If you're aware of the Ayurvedic map of the body, then you'll know that there are 3 doshas that people may fall into, although they can go out of balance into the other doshas as well. There is Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And if you know that you tend towards Kapha, this next breath, Kapalabhati, will help to build digestive fire, to build the fire in the body, and maybe move you out of lethargy. It may also help those who are suffering from sadness or the beginnings of depression. So with Kapalabhati, it is a kind of rapid diaphragmatic breathing. This one is particularly tricky, and you might hyperventilate if you do it wrong. So I really strongly suggest, as with all the other breaths, but particularly this one, please make sure that you see your certified yoga instructor to teach you properly. Kapalabhati, the rapid diaphragmatic breathing, is very good to expel toxins out of the body that may have been squeezed out from the organs during a yoga practice. It's also helpful, like I said, to build fire. So what happens is if you place your hand again on your belly, right above your belly button, this time you want to do a really rapid exhalation where you draw the belly back in towards the spine and you'll flap the diaphragm. Imagine that you've got a feather on the tip of your nose and you want to blow it off, just breathing through the nose. Like that. As you begin your round, inhale and then begin. You exhale by blowing out and getting that imaginary feather off the nose. And then as you release the belly and it flaps out from the spine, naturally you inhale. So let's see how that goes. Now inhale, release the belly. Inhale, release the belly. So if you're going to practice Kapalabhati, you can practice a round of up to 15 to begin with. You're not doing the deep 3-part breath when you're blowing off that imaginary feather off your nose. You are just drawing in the belly in towards the spine rapidly and flapping your diaphragm. Like that. There is no 3-part breath. If you're having any trouble with this breath at all, please stop and go see your certified yoga instructor to sit with you and to teach it to you and to watch to make sure that you're doing it properly. The reason I say this is that I have been in many yoga classes where students have not been doing it properly and they've actually hyperventilated and gotten dizzy. Because if you reverse the breathing, it is not good. So if you want something that is stimulating, then ask your certified yoga instructor to teach you Kapalabhati. The final set of breaths that we're going to talk through today are the cooling breaths, and they are not recommended to be practiced in the winter. But if you have an overabundance of heat in the body, if you tend to go out of balance in pitta, if you know that about yourself already, or if you are experiencing a lot of anger, this may be a set of breathing techniques that can be helpful for you. The first of the cooling breaths is called Sitali, and it's very simple. It involves curling the tongue as if you have a pencil on your tongue, and you curl the tongue around it. So we inhale through that curled tongue, we draw back the tongue into our mouth, close the lips, and exhale through the nose. It looks a little weird, but it is a cooling breath, and it looks like this. Now, I am overemphasizing my exhalation so that you can hear it, but ideally in all of these breathing techniques, you want to make your breath as calm, as smooth, and as quiet as you can. If you're unable to curl your tongue, and many people are not, then there is another technique called Sitkari, which involves closing the teeth, opening the lips, and breathing through your closed teeth, then closing the lips and exhaling through the nose. And it looks like this. And that's it. That's Sitkari. I hope that you will find that some of these breathing techniques, at least the deep 3-part breath, Dirgha Swasam, will help you to manage difficult emotions in these challenging times. As I said, please consult your doctor to make sure that breath control is right for you. And if you choose to do any of these techniques, whether it's a cooling breath, a stimulating breath, or a calming breath, find yourself a certified yoga instructor, whatever tradition you want to follow, and allow them to teach you pranayama. Today, I'm grateful that I have these techniques in my toolkit so that when I am stressed out or I'm feeling a bit low or I want to get into a meditative state, I can use these techniques as I need them. For what are you most grateful today?